This is called the why, what, and how of school-family partnerships, family-school partnerships. So I'm going to try to touch on some of the important things that we've learned from the research and from practice about how this works. But first thing I want you to do is I want to ask you a question, okay? At your tables, I'm going to give you just a few minutes. I want you to talk with the folks at your table, introduce yourselves to one another if you haven't done that already, or find a partner. We call this think, pair, share. How many of you in this room are teachers? So you know about think, pair, share probably, okay? I want you to talk about what are the various roles that parents play when they are effectively engaged in their children's learning and development, okay? So let me give you a few minutes and then we're going to do a report out. What we are now calling this in the world of family and community engagement is that these are parents who are agents of change. They support learning at home. They're those connectors between home and school. They provide encouragement and support for their children. They're advocates, which is not a bad word. A lot of people hear advocates. I kind of heard that little ooh and ah in the room even, right? But they have to be there to advocate for their child. In many cases, they're decision makers, right? The families who come and they act in leadership positions in your schools, okay? So these are folks who are agents of change for their children and for the community and for the school as well. So what happens when families are these agents of change and school and home partner to support children's learning? Many moons ago, my partner and I, my partner in crime, I should say, Ann Henderson, some of you may know her work, she and I were asked to write a book for practitioners on the research on family and community engagement, because a lot of people always want to know, hey, if you want me to do more family engagement in my schools, where's the beef? How many of you remember the where's the beef lady, right? Where's the beef? What am I going to get out of this? If I'm going to spend my time and my resources on engaging families and partnering with community, where's the beef? So Ann and I put this book together called A New Wave of Evidence. And it looked at 50 studies from around the country that looked at the effects, the outcomes of family and school partnerships on student achievement. And what did we find out? We found out a lot. That when families are agents of change and there's a partnership between home and school, we see a number of different outcomes. First of all, these are the children who are more than likely to have the higher grades and test scores. But that's not all. Someone here talked about emotional development, social development. We see effects on the whole child. So what else do we see? These are the students who enroll in higher level programs. I'm going to tell you a quick story about that. When I was in high school, I was an honors student, and my junior year of high school, I decided I was tired. You know, I had taken honors classes ever since I was in the 6th grade. I had had it. I was worn out. Now, my parents at that time had not graduated from college. They later on went back to school and got their degrees. But they didn't know the kinds of courses that I should be taking to get into a good 4-year college. They had an idea, but in those days, we had all these fancy schmancy names for classes. You know, we tried to do like the colleges. And so my mother was always telling me to take Latin, and I didn't pay attention to her, and I should have. But she didn't really know, you know, what the different designations were for the honors courses. So I knew I could get away with not taking honors classes, and she might not know. And I convinced one of my best friends to do the same because she was tired too. Right? Well, lo and behold, her mom was a lunch monitor at the school, but her mom was also one of these very gregarious parents who went to the school, you know, 2 days before school started with the brownies and the cookies for the school staff. She happened to go into the guidance counselor's office, and the guidance counselor had just looked at my friend's course planner for that semester. And she said, Mrs. Savastano, that was her name, we called her Mrs. Sav, your daughter is, you know, watering down her curriculum, and she's, you know, in the top 10% of her class. she's not going to be able to get into a good four-year college if she goes this route. So Mrs. Savastano said, well, thank you so much. So she immediately went home and she confronted Ginger. And she said, Ginger, what's going on here? Why are you doing this? What did Ginger tell her mother? Karen Mapp, right? So what did Ginger's mother do? She called my mama. Do I need to tell you the rest of the story? You know what happened next, right? Yeah, I was really tired. Barbara's right, okay? So my parents intervened and they said, you know, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know that we want you to get into a good four-year college. So from now on, young lady, you're going to have to show us the courses that you're taking. And then my parents called the school and said, could you please let us know, because we don't know. Now, see, you know what? You hear what I'm saying here? My parents didn't know. That didn't mean they didn't care. They just didn't know all of the language, and that's what is the case for a lot of our families, is that they don't know, okay? It's not that they don't care, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. These are the students who are promoted. They graduate on time and they earn more credits. They adapt better to school. Lots of studies that talk about when home and school are in partnership, when that child knows that grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, auntie, mom, dad, all of the above are adult caretakers. So when I say parent, I mean all of those folks, foster parents, okay? When those children know that their parent has a relationship with someone at the school, it improves their attitude about school. When they see that mom and dad, grandma, grandpa have conversations and know the teachers and the school staff and they're welcome to the school, those kids sit up and take notice. I don't know if you've ever had a grandparent come into your school and sit in on a classroom, and all of a sudden those kids that were misbehaving sit up because they know Mrs. Johnson, right? Okay? These are also the kids that have better social skills and behavior, and last but not least, these are the kids that graduate and go on to higher education. So, is this the beef that we want? Yes, it is. Okay? This is what we've discovered, ladies and gentlemen. There is a new study out. It's an absolutely wonderful research study done by a group out of Chicago, the Chicago Consortium for School Research. And what they did was they looked at 200 schools, and they've been looking at these schools now for almost 20 years. 100 of those schools have been doing well. They've been closing the achievement gap. They really see school improvement happening at those schools. But the other 100 schools have been faltering or failing for quite some time. Maybe they start to go up and then they fall back down. So Anthony Breich is the name of one of the lead researchers. He and his colleagues really wanted to see what were the differences between the schools that were doing well and the schools that could not seem to get it together and improve. And what they discovered are what they're calling 5 essential supports to school improvement. And what they are saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that without all 5 working together, you will not see improvement in schools. You will not be able to close the achievement gap. They use the analogy of a cake, and I kind of tease them because I've been using a cake analogy for a long time. Basically what they're saying is that just like with a cake, if you remove one of the ingredients, the cake is a failure. So let's look at those 5 ingredients that have to be in place in order for your schools and your district to improve. The first one, not a surprise, strong leadership. But here's one of the things that they've discovered, is that these leaders are what we call distributive leaders. In other words, they distribute leadership throughout the building. They are not the only ones who have the mantle or title of leadership, and they are not afraid to share power. They share power with their staff. They encourage their staff to take on leadership positions. They offer their staff professional development to be leaders, and they also encourage parental leadership and community leadership. So these are people who think through the lens of shared power. Number 2, wow, parent and community ties is an essential ingredient to school improvement. Now, people like me in this field jump up and down when we hear this, because for too long, family and community engagement has been seen as an add-on. We do it when we have time, which we never have the time for it. It's seen as something we do on the side. What this research is saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that that is a mistake. Every one of your schools should have a family and community engagement plan that's a part of your strategy for whole school improvement. Now, I pause there because a lot of times people are saying, oh my goodness. We usually see family engagement as a compliance activity. Okay? So when Marlon comes around, oh yeah, we've got it together, right? It should not be a compliance activity. It's a part of your teaching and learning strategy. What are the other essential ingredients? Professional capacity, making sure we have people teaching in our schools and our staff that are learners themselves, who want to learn, and who are qualified. Now, you notice I say that they are learners. I'm not saying that everybody has to be perfect right from the time they enter the building, but they're willing to learn how to improve their craft. You also need to have a student-centered learning climate where the students are at the center of the enterprise, not the adults. So that what we do is for the benefit of the kids, not for the adults. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when I was Deputy Superintendent for Family and Community Engagement, we used to do walkthroughs at our schools. And I don't have time to go into how I know, but I can tell within 5 minutes when I'm in a building whether it's there for the adults or for the kids. 5 minutes is all I need. Okay? Some of you probably can sense that too when you walk into a building. So you need a building that's about the students. And then finally, there needs to be a system for constant instructional guidance, where teachers and other school staff, there's a culture and an environment in that building where people share best practice. People aren't afraid to admit mistakes. Unfortunately, in a lot of our schools, there's a culture where, oh my goodness, everybody's supposed to look like they're perfect all of the time. That's ridiculous. We learn from our mistakes, right? But we don't learn if we keep them to ourselves and we can't discuss them with others. So one of the researchers that was on this team basically is saying, you know, as a whole, this research is so strong that none of them can imagine that an urban school will succeed without all 5. That's how strong the research is. So again, if you're thinking that family and community engagement is something that you're going to do when you have time, one of my messages to you today is you're going to have to rethink that. Because now we know you have to have it as a part of your strategy for improvement. So if family engagement is so important, one of the other things that I want to ask you now is, okay, so we have all these roles up here for our parents. So I'm going to give you another minute to talk with each other about, so how do parents become effective agents of change? How does that happen? Okay, so let me give you a little minute to talk about that in your group. What we can conclude from this list is that how we learn to do these things we're calling effective agents of change has a lot to do with our social circumstances. Level 1 is basically saying that before parents become effective agents of change, and they do all those lovely things that we wrote down in terms of a parent's role, that's actually level 2 on the sheet. Before we can get parents to be advocates for their children, communicate with the school staff, volunteer, Support their child's learning through encouragement. Before you can even get there, 3 things have to happen. First of all, parents' motivational beliefs have to be such that they understand their role, so they understand that being a communicator and a supporter of learning and a decision maker is important. Some parents don't know that. They think that their role, especially if they are illiterate themselves and maybe have only graduated with an 8th grade education, if they don't speak English, they feel, oh, you know what, my role can only be to deliver my child to the professionals. I can't possibly be good at anything else that's going to help support my child because I didn't do well. So all I'm going to do, my role is as deliverer, as a customer, delivering you a good, okay, my child. So my role is very narrowly constructed. So one of the things we have to work on first is expanding parents' role construction. Is getting them to see that, you know what, it really does make a difference if you do more than that. But a lot of parents don't know that yet. The other thing they have to know is they have to feel confident that what they do is going to make a difference. That's called self-confidence or efficacy. And this wonderful woman here in the front talked about that. She got a clue that what she was doing made a difference from her child. That gave her confidence to do more. When you don't feel like anything you do is going to make a difference, do you continue to do it? No. The second piece that has to be in place are the parents' perceptions of invitations from others, okay? If the parents are getting signals from the child, but more importantly, from the school, the teachers and the other folks that, you know, we don't really want you, they're not going to get engaged. And to top it off, if they don't have the confidence, the self-efficacy, they will not plow through those distractions. They won't be able to do it. And last but not least, their perceived life context, if they're feeling overwhelmed, if they don't think that there's any way for them to be engaged. For example, a lot of times our school systems emphasize only narrow ways that families can be engaged. So they'll say parent-teacher conferences, being on the PTA, and that's it. Parents say, well, you know, I can't do any of those things, so I guess I can't be engaged. So we have to expand our definition of family engagement. So when parents aren't at that parental involvement behaviors level, you see, when you go up to level 2, you start to see the roles that you all listed a few minutes ago. That the parents are encouraging, they're modeling, right? Reinforcement, they offer instruction. They're involved at home or at school. My point to you is this, ladies and gentlemen, before parents move up into level 2, you've got to work on level 1. And a lot of times our family engagement initiatives assume that parents are already at level 2. And when they don't respond, they don't care. Okay? So let's talk about what we can do to try to move our families from level 1 to level 2. Okay? And I will send this chart to Marlon, and then you all can have it. We'll send it out through email or whatever. But Kathleen Hoover-Dempsey, she's really got this down. I really love her work. Because if you look at the rest of it, you can see that how parents feel about their children's education when they start to do that encouragement piece, when they take on that agent of change role, it changes the way the students think about themselves, and that's what affects student achievement. That's how parent engagement affects student achievement. That's the process that she's laid out for you, okay? So let's talk about what we have to do. Okay, so how are we going to build parent capacity to be these agents of change, okay? So what it's going to require is that we're going to have to think a little bit differently about family engagement. And I'm going to really focus on family engagement for the rest of my talk. There's really three things that we have to do. It's going to require a paradigm shift in our core beliefs, in our definition and vision of partnership, and how we approach family engagement. Okay, so let's talk about our core beliefs first. I teach a class on leadership. And one of the things that you know when you learn about leadership frameworks and theories is that leaders lead from their core beliefs. That's where it all comes from, that fire in the belly. And what I did a few years ago was I interviewed principals who were really, really, really good at family engagement. Because I wanted to see if there were any common threads in their description about what they do and what they believe in that has caused them to be able to be great leaders when it comes to engaging families. And there were 4 things that I heard from all of those principals that I spoke to. And it was all about this is what they believe in their belly, in their heart, in their soul about family engagement. So the first belief was that all of their families, and when I say all, I mean all of their families, wanted to see the children do well and had hopes and dreams for their child. No matter where they came from, no matter their circumstances, no matter their educational background, that they made the assumption, they led with that belief that every parent that they met had dreams for their children and wanted the best for them. So they didn't start the other way with what we call a more deficit lens. So when Mrs. Johnson or, Miss Williams or Dad, Tyrone came into the office, those principals said, I know in my heart that this parent wants the best for their child. They didn't start the other way around. Because I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, remember I told you how when I walk into a school, I can usually tell within 5 minutes? I can tell by the way that people greet me. Right? I used to do mystery shopping visits in Boston, where I would dress down, baseball cap turned around, and I just walk into a school to see how they treated me. Did they treat me as if I was a very important person? Or did they treat me like I was an intruder? That there is assumption that this person is going to come in and has ill will in mind. So that was one of the ways I could tell. When I met the principal, if the principal didn't know who I was, how did he or she greet me? Okay? So these were principals, school leaders who said, in my building, the assumption is that all parents care about their children's education. Now, some of them would say some of them do things that give me pause, right? But I know that it's probably because they don't know what to do. Okay? I'm not going to assume that they don't care. This is a quote from Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot. Some of you may know her work. Fabulous, fabulous researcher. She wrote a book called The Essential Conversation, which is a great book about the relationship between teachers and parents. And so she says, I believe that all parents hold big expectations for the role that schools will play in the life chances of their children. They all harbor a large wish list of dreams and aspirations for their youngsters. All families care deeply about their children's education and hope that their progeny will be happier, more productive, and more successful than they have been in their lives. Okay, so that's core belief 1. This one, ladies and gentlemen, I think is the most important one that's up here. This is where you have to start. Number 2, all of your parents have the capacity to become agents of change. They have the capacity to learn new skills. It doesn't mean that they're all going to become the PTA board president, but they can learn new skills and things they could do at home or in the community. So you have to believe that your parents have the capacity to learn and grow, just like you have to believe that of the children that come to you every day. Number 3, you got to be partners with your families, okay? Somewhere along the line, I learned that Louisiana is one of these big football states. Is that true? Where did I get that from, huh? Okay, who dat, right? So let me ask you a little bit of a question about a football team. What are the two parts of a football team? Offense and defense, right? Okay? So if you have a football team where the offensive players say, you know what, we're the most important part of the team. That defense, we don't need them. You know, they're all right. But we do the majority of the work. We have to score all the points. They're below us in terms of importance. Is that team going to the Super Bowl? That's right, you don't have a team. Same thing if the defense says, you know, we're the most important part of the team. You know, those players, those guys, you know, they get the commercials and all that stuff, you know, the quarterbacks, but we're the most important. Is that team going to the Super Bowl? No. They're not a team. But let me ask you, the offensive players, defensive players, do they have the same skills? No. So your parents, I'm not saying that your parents are going to come in and take over your classes, although some of them might try. Okay, I know that too, okay? That's not what we're talking about here. What we're saying is that everybody has a skill that's important to the enterprise of improving schools and student achievement. Everybody in this room has what I call an invisible toolkit right here. Now, my tools that I have are different than Megan's tools, right? Megan and I should share those in order to help our kids. Same thing with parents. Parents are the children's first teachers. So they have knowledge about those children that we need. Very important. So you have to see your parents as partners. And when they feel that, they will do the world for you. I will tell you, I have seen parents when a principal and a teaching staff lets the parents know that they are partners, those parents will really go the extra mile because they feel like somebody is finally treating them with respect.